Okay, awesome. So I'd like to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Ashanti. Most of you probably know me through the emails that I've sent. I'm NAMI Louisville's program membership coordinator. I've been with NAMI since September of 2020, which is a little over a year and a half. And my role has evolved throughout my time here, which now includes communications for NAMI through the newsletter and social media. And I know a lot of people have come to the workshop today from the newsletter, so it's always wonderful to see that people read what we put out. Um, we have two wonderful speakers today, one of who is Nancy Brooks, our wonderful executive director and fearless leader at NAMI Louisville. She's great. She's always working tirelessly to make sure that we provide the services that we do to our community. And I personally have grown so much in my role, and I feel like I'm continuously growing, and I have to give so much of that credit to Nancy. Make sure that we have a well-balanced team and that we are always having a growth mindset. So thank you, Nancy. If you could please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about NAMI, and then we'll continue with the introductions.
Well, thanks for that lovely introduction. Ashanti is right. She has grown a lot in her time at NAMI, but I trust your skills just blossoming as you grow. So I see a few faces and a few other names I know on the list here. So excited to see some people that I know. And for all of you who are new to NAMI, we are the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the local affiliate to Louisville. So that's why we go by the acronym NAMI and Louisville. So what we really try to do here is focus our attention not just on the programs that are designed out of the national organization in Washington, D.C., but to think, what does our community need? We're hearing a lot about housing, and we made this relationship with the Lexington Fair Housing Group maybe a year ago now. But when this idea came about, this was really exciting for us, a great opportunity to support a need in our community that doesn't always fit our hat. So thank you guys for thinking of us.
Thank you, Nancy. Our next speaker will be Kat from the Lexington Fair Housing Council, which provides services to all of Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. And this whole event was Kat's idea. She came to us and we were just really excited to do it with her. And she's been really dedicated and committed to educating our community about housing rights. And so all of the images you've seen on social media and the newsletter were actually Kat's doing. We really couldn't have done this without you. So if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about Lexington Fair Housing Council, that would be great.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kat. I'm with the Lexington Fair Housing Council. I work as our education and outreach coordinator. So that means I get to spend my day trying to find ways to connect with our community to make sure that all of us feel empowered and knowledgeable about our housing rights that are protected under fair housing law. So with Lexington Fair Housing, we do have a home base in Lexington. If you wanted to go into an office, you'd have to drive there. But we serve everywhere. I'm here in Valley Station. I'm here in Louisville based in order to support our community. And we are a nonprofit civil rights organization. So we provide legal representation, but also advocacy around fair housing law and to represent folks for free who do face housing discrimination.
Thank you, Kat. For those of you who joined us a little bit late, thank you for attending. And I'll go over the house rules real quick again. Please stay muted unless you're actively speaking. As you can see, this meeting is being recorded and it'll be shared on a follow-up email and on social media. If you have any tech issues, you can send me a private message so I can assist you. And for everybody, if you have any questions at all through this presentation, we're going to go ahead and save them to the end. So that being said, you can feel free to send them in the chat to everyone, or if you want to do it anonymously, you can send it directly to me and I won't share your name. And we'll read that out loud in the last 10 minutes of this meeting. And we can get started with the first portion, which is Nancy. So go ahead and take it away. You're muted, Nancy.
Once I started sharing, I couldn't find how to unmute myself. My apologies there. All right. So as mentioned before, we're NAMI Louisville, and I am Nancy Brooks. I will have contact information at the end again, so I'll share, you can write it down or get it off the recording. Again, I mentioned that NAMI Louisville is a local affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and that we do our programming here locally. We've been doing that for 42 years, but quite frankly, I feel like we've been under a shell for many of those years. Our footprint is growing. We're listening to the community. And while we don't receive funding from the national organization, we do everything local. So they never come into our market. We're the person you would call to reach out and get information. Our mission is to strengthen families and individuals affected by mental illness through education, support, and advocacy. We provide many services locally. One is stigma-free training, which is for the workplace or for schools. So large groups that would like to have someone come in and provide an educational training or a presentation on any subject whatsoever, we're willing to do that. So if anyone knows of a business, a church, a community center, a school that would be interested in this, please send them our way. We also provide free education classes, support groups, and presentations like this. We provide QPR suicide prevention training, and we have a youth advisory council that helps us identify goals and support youth in the community. And again, everything we do is free. We provide it online or in person. So I'm going to give you a little more detail about our education classes. One of the things that makes NAMI really unique is that we support the family as well as the individual. So the education classes are to educate your family members. So let's say that you're an individual who's been dealing with a mental health condition for some period of time, but your family is struggling to understand. They could come to the Family to Family 8-week course and gain an incredible amount of knowledge on how to support you, where resources are, how to better communicate, what some of the pharmacology and background in genetics is in mental illness. So it's almost like mental illness 101. Basics is a 6-week course, a little bit shorter, but intended for parents of youth who are ages 6 to 22. The youth does not have to have a full-blown diagnosis. You don't have to know what it is. You just have to think there may be something mental health oriented that's creating a few problems for that child in their life, and you want to become better educated. And Homefront is a 6-week course for families of veterans or active military. Another thing that NAMI really focuses on is what we call the peer group. So you could see how those groups were broken into peers. All of our teachers in classes and all of our support group facilitators are trained for 3 long weekend days, and they also have to fit into the group that they're going to support. So we offer 2 different types of support groups: family support groups for the family members, and there are 10 monthly opportunities. And some of these are broken down. There's one group that meets on Sundays that focuses on parents of younger folks. And there's a group that has more veteran families in it. There's a group that meets in person because they just love to meet in person. There's groups for youth. We're also actually planning on starting a group for restaurant industry workers. So again, really focusing on that group peer relationship. Now, Connection Support Group is specifically for the individuals who are on their own mental health journey. And again, youth is divided by 15 to 18, 18 to 30, and then we have just some adult groups. And all of these opportunities are virtual currently, but they meet at different times of day and different days of the week, so people can help plug those into their schedule. We offer 2 specific types of presentations to give individuals an opportunity to share their own story with an audience. Their journey of mental health is unique to them, and many people can learn from that, but what they also can see is the human on the other side of the illness. I'm always fascinated with the quality of these speakers. And again, this is something we could bring to you guys in another capacity, or if you're an individual who's had your own mental health journey and you're really interested in how you can advocate and speak out, help reduce the stigma, etc., these may be great programs for you to train in. I mentioned stigma-free workplace earlier, and again, this initiative's aim is to sort of get into the workplace, work with management, work with HR, and empower those employers to not only retain the really great employees that they've already got trained that are working there who may need some time off, but to assist in creating a culture where compassion is at the heart of the company and where mental health is prioritized and where folks are given resources instead of reprimands for needing a mental health day, for example. QPR suicide prevention training is a 1-hour education course that is similar to CPR. It stands for question, persuade, and refer. And it only takes, we always have a couple options on our website. It's usually virtual, but if you wanted to get a group and have it in person, we could do that. And those options, again, when you went on the website and looked up QPR suicide prevention training, it takes only $5 to take the course. It's 1 hour to take it, and you become a gatekeeper when you're done. In other words, we're going to send you a booklet that's going to remind you of all the tools that you learned and really help you to save a life, because in order to help someone who's having a mental health crisis, you have to know how to talk to them. You have to know how to persuade them to get help, and you have to know where to refer them to. And this training will help you do that. There are many resources in our community. We even have a staff member whose whole focus is to answer resource calls, to talk to folks in emails about resources. These are some of the places that we work with closely. But the reality is that, we want you to reach out to us if you have any questions whatsoever, and we will help you navigate that journey. Now to get into the housing side of things. So how does housing affect mental health? Well, we know that a person's safety and their comfort and their conditions that they live in all kind of are part of that physical and mental health. So it's the quality of life. So quality of housing is the physical condition of the place where someone is living. What is that environment like? Where is it located? Does it feel safe? Aspects of housing quality can include anything from, is the air quality in the neighborhood good, to is the home or the neighborhood safe? Is the space suitable for the individual? Is there enough space for people to feel comfortable living in? Does it have things like mold or asbestos or lead? There are so many things that go into that aspect of housing. But those are just some of the high points that, if you're not safe, if you are overcrowded or there's noise or pollution in your neighborhood or whatever, then you're going to actually not feel very comfortable in that environment. There's a strong connection between poor rental housing and mental health conditions such as depression and hostility among residents. I think most of us can relate to that neighbor that, they used to say fences made good neighbors, because there's always someone that you live near that just kind of rubs you the wrong way. One thing like that can spiral in a rental situation where you no longer feel comfortable in that environment. These feelings can increase with overcrowding or neighborhood disarray. Housing cost is a pressure that weighs on us. How much is it going to cost me to live in this? What do I have to do? Many folks in the mental health community have chosen to go on partial disability, where they'll be on disability, but maybe still have a part-time job. This works well for them in a sense of being safe and secure and knowing that they'll always have some income. But it puts a pressure on the ability of money they're able to make, and therefore how much they're able to put towards their housing. 25% of folks who say housing cost can cause arguments within their family or within the housemate that they have. And 33% say housing costs are causing stress and depression in their family. And as we all know, this is not getting better at the current rate. We're seeing increases in everything. So how does housing affect mental health continued? Poor living conditions, including a cold or even a hot or humid environment, can cause physical health problems. Mental health and physical health are closely related. We hear it all the time. And we need to remember that not just our mental well-being, but our physical well-being can be impacted by the places that we live. People with mental health conditions are often likely to live in poorer housing or have housing problems where they, maybe switched from living with their families to living with a friend, to attempting to live on their own, to needing to go back to living with a friend. This can make your mental health worse. It's just a lot of stress to have issues in housing in general, and then including things like the damp, the mold, again, when we talk about that, the antisocial neighbor, any of those things can be part of an impact on your mental well-being. The individuals with mental illness are 1.5 times more likely to live in rented housing, twice as likely to be unhappy with their home, and 4 times as likely to say that it makes their health worse, with greater uncertainty about how long they can remain in their current home. So those are just some of the effects on mental health that are related to housing. Now here, this slide I actually really enjoy because it's more about, when do you know it's right for you to live alone? We talked about that jumping around from living with your family to living with a friend to maybe trying to be on your own. If you need a routine, then living alone can suit you really well because there's no one to interrupt your routine. Those of us who really value peace and quiet maybe need that downtime to recharge or rewind ourselves into a positive space in our heads. We may really like living alone. If we like things to remain put in place. I know this is a challenge for a lot of us that have roommates, everywhere from, young people who first move out of their homes and have a roommate to older people who've been married for 20 years. You want to put something in a certain place and you're living with someone else, you're likely to find it not in that place. You're likely to find the dishes in the sink. You're likely to find that no one pitched in and took the trash out that week. If those sorts of things bother you, then living alone is probably something you might enjoy. When we live alone, we don't have to cope with anyone else's mess, and we just pick whatever we want to do or whatever we want to eat. Again, that whole idea of compromise with a roommate is eliminated. However, to live alone, you absolutely need the ability to do the following. You have to pay for things like rent and bills. You have to remember to keep up with those things like bill payments, and not rely on someone else to tell you that it's time to do those. You need to take care of your physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. Many people that live alone can suffer from loneliness. The whole flip side of, are you okay to live alone? There are many people that absolutely would not thrive living alone. And part of that is that they're really looking for the support of someone else, both emotionally and financially, and maybe in taking care of their mental health. So again, take care of your physical, emotional, and spiritual needs is something you will have to do if you live alone on your own. So you have to decide to do that and to commit to that, taking care of yourself. To take care of your health needs like meds and going to medical appointments, again, just another journey for a lot of us to juggle all those things that we have to remember to do. If that is not something you're ready to do on your own, then you might not want to live alone. And of course, whenever you need help, you should always reach out for help. And that's something that we talk a lot about when we talk about the stigma. We know in mental illness that there are many people who are simply afraid to ask for help because they prefer whoever's at the other end of that line, whether it's the boss at work, whether it's their parent, whether it's someone at school, whether it's a friend. They really don't feel comfortable letting that person know that their mental health needs are a concern. But I remind folks all the time, there's no one who doesn't have some psychological injuries, and mental illness affects 1 in 4 adults. And in youth populations, mental illness is growing rapidly. It has increased by 50% in folks seeking professional help over the last several years. So if you're, here today and you really don't know that there's someone in your circle that may have mental health conditions, but you just want to know what those signs and symptoms are, these are some of the maybe most common: some social withdrawal, difficulty functioning at school or work, problems with their memory or the way they're thinking. Are they feeling disconnected from their friends or family? Changes in sleep, eating, or hygiene, alcohol or drug abuse, extreme mood changes, and of course, thoughts of suicide. So sometimes in mental illness, you'll see a combination of some of these. Other times you'll see maybe one that dominates that you think, gosh, I've noticed this for so long. Maybe I should talk to my loved one and see if maybe they're feeling okay. And again, if you took the QPR suicide prevention training, you would know how to ask the questions and how to feel comfortable kind of inserting yourself into that conversation with a loved one. And how can you help your loved one if they do want to find their own housing, but maybe still need some help from you? You could help manage finances by setting up automatic bill payments, writing post-dated rent checks. You could support in that way, and the person would still have a lot of autonomy and ability to live on their own. You could help schedule appointments, make sure that the appointments are happening. And do they need transportation? Make sure that that is handled, and make sure that they get to their healthcare appointments. You could pick up prescriptions that are routinely filled on a monthly basis. You could check in frequently. I would caution when you check in frequently, be light, be inviting, be supportive, and don't put a lot of pressure on that individual at that time. You don't want to alienate someone by kind of naggingly checking in. And set up a schedule for check-in times if it becomes an issue that you're checking into regularly or that you're, not checking in enough. Bring over a meal. I don't know anyone that would say, oh gosh, I'm sorry, my friend brought me a meal tonight. Even if you weren't hungry for it that night, it would be great for leftovers the next day. And help with cleaning or laundry. Again, I can't think of anyone who wouldn't be grateful for that sort of support. There are a lot of resources in our community. There are also a lot of resources that we've used online. And I have there it is. Let's see if this will work. We tried to embed a video, but it doesn't look like it worked, Ashanti.
Okay, give me just a second.
These will be saved on these slides. And if anyone does want to say, gosh, where did they get some of their information? We have all the links attached here that we used. And if Ashanti can get this running, we'll play this video. It's about these 4 people, kind of moving towards independence in their own journeys.
Sorry, y'all, give me just a second. That was the thing that I did not pull up beforehand.
Yeah, it just doesn't want to. There's my contact information while Ashanti's working on that, if anyone wants to write it down. Again, you call the 588 number. Most likely you'll talk with Lori and she'll help you with resources in the community. Because our resources are free, we're always trying to make sure that people know about those so that they're not, spending dollars on getting help that they need. But sometimes what a person is calling about is beyond what we can personally help with, but we have a number, we have a contact for you. The 553 number is my cell phone. You're always welcome to reach out to me as well. We have volunteer opportunities. I mentioned the Youth Advisory Council. It is for youth ages 13 to 25. And again, the purpose of that council is to help us identify what are some programming ideas, what are some ways we can support youth, because for youth ages 13 to 25, these are the years where likely a mental health condition exists, but is not being properly treated. And because of that time period, many youth are struggling to keep up at school, to hold down jobs, to maintain their friendships with their friends and family. Maybe they're getting into substance abuse because they don't feel right and the substance makes them feel less unright. Again, there's so many reasons that those years should be productive years when someone's going to high school and maybe when they're going to go to college or get their first job. And if their life is unraveling because of their own mental health, that could have been prevented by seeking proper therapy or working with a doctor, then, we really want those youth to thrive during those years. So that's our goal, is put some programs into schools, put some programs in front of youth that can truthfully support their mental well-being and give them the foundation for healthy living, no matter whether or not they have a mental health condition.
All right, and Shanti actually sent me the video, so I can go ahead and pull it up. Go.
Should I stop sharing?
Yes.
Yeah, and then I'll share.
Okay.
We are not able to hear.
Oh, okay.
I think when you share it initially, there's a button that says share audio, but only you will see it.
Oh, yeah.
When I moved out to uni, but I came back in January, so yeah, come inside.
What happens now is that I live with my mum and I have support workers that come in and help me to do something at home, and they'll get me out and do stuff, and that's good because then they're not there like all the time, they're just there sometimes, and that works better because then I feel like I've got like a normal life, but I'm also getting the support that I need sometimes.
I got this place after bidding for like a year solid on the housing list, and excited to finally be in there.
I went from hospital where I was for 9 months into a rehabilitational unit. I was there for a good couple of years, I'd say 3 years. And then from there I went to what they call like a satellite house. You still get the carer come in every now and then to make sure the house is being
Hey,
run.
Kat, at the bottom of your video, can you turn up the volume, please?
Oh, yeah.
And put on closed captioning, sorry. Thank you.
Tidy, food in the cupboard, drink and all that we're looking after ourselves. And then from the satellite house, I moved to here.
I'm so excited to be going. I can't believe this day has come. I didn't think it would at one point in my life. I thought that I'd always be dependent on my parents, especially when I was stuck in depression.
We're going to split my house into two so that I've got the upstairs level and my mum's got the downstairs level, so I can live a bit more independently with my daughter. and not have my mum there all the time, but she's still like next door if I need her. The room that's my mum's room at the moment is going to hopefully end up being my daughter's room, and then the bathroom's going to stay the same, and my daughter's room's going to be my new kitchen. My room's staying the same, and then the office and spare bedroom is going to be my living room, and then hopefully my office as well, in case I want to start working and maybe set my own business up.
Even though I'm living by myself, I still get support from my CPN in terms of helping with my medication and just seeing I'm generally alright. I'm not stressed, I'm not depressed, and I think getting a job adds to that, because I'm not in the house all day. I think being in the house all day can make you quite anxious, make you not want to leave eventually.
I'll just take you to the garden. But no, 18 months I've lived here for now, and it's been the best 18 months in the 6 years that I've had, or that I've suffered from depression anyway, and it's the beautiful garden. It is massive, as you can tell.
This is like the first time I'm living by myself, otherwise I've been living in shared houses and stuff. So I'm really excited to show you what's been going on. We have the stairs, go up the stairs, just what stairs are for. And we turn to the left, come to the hallway. Behind this door is the bedroom. Sorry, I'm a bit of a slob. Behind the door is the bedroom. And then past the bathroom, we have the front room. This is a little poster I want to put up, and that's the tour of the house.
So it's been a week and settled in so quickly. It's been really lovely, especially living with my friend. It's just such a laugh and nice to have some space and time to myself. Starting a new chapter of life, I guess.
With me playing my music, you know, there's another guitarist here luckily as well, so you know, we kind of bounce ideas off each other, you know, what songs we're learning, this, that and the other.
The good thing about living on your own, you can decorate it how you want.
What are you doing now, Liz?
I'm just stripping this wallpaper, so I've got spray wash on it first to get wet and then strip it off.
Okay.
But it's really hard to get off.
Yeah.
It's a nice living environment, and I'd recommend it to anyone that is recovering from mental health illness, any mental health illness, you know, it's just the ideal place to be.
You know, you gotta pay bills yourself, but I'm working now so I can do that. Good things is I'm in an area I know, with people that I know, so if anything goes wrong, it's around the corner, I'll go there anytime. I do like it.
So yeah, I'm feeling a lot more confident than I was a few years ago. Getting out of the house more, definitely being more independent. I kind of enjoy learning Italian, enjoying going to the gym, enjoying spending time with my daughter and like spending time with support workers and my friends and my family.
It's going well, not what I expected, you know, it's not like parties every week, and it's like, yeah, I can retreat somewhere, you know, when reading my mail, or it's just like me, I can just hide away, or I can face the world whenever I want. So it's definitely a good move for me.
So a lot's kind of happened in the last few months. As you may be able to tell, I'm back where I started. I obviously moved up to Norwich, a long way away from home. I kind of became quite unwell, ended up in hospital, in an inpatient mental health hospital in Norwich. It's kind of been decided that I'm going to stay back in Wales now. So I'm going to be living in my own place in the same town as my parents and most of my family, so I've got them round. For anyone really who's had to do this or will have to in the future, and I've moved out and then I've had to kind of move back and rely on parents or family or friends again, then you know, that's okay. That's okay. It's not you failing, it's not a bad thing. You can't always determine how your mental health's going to be and how unpredictable it can be. But for now, this is where I am, and I'm okay with that, I think.
This might be a great place
So
to stop the
finish
video.
writing this song.
Mhm.
I've
All right.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, so again, just some examples of some different individuals sharing their journey to go out on their own and live independently and some of the obstacles that they came across. So I think it's Kat's turn to share her efforts here.
All right. Okay, everybody. Once again, my name's Kat, and I'm going to be talking to you all about fair housing to really explain the protections that we have that surround mental health, specifically folks with mental illnesses. We already talked about this, but just so you know, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box if they're clarifications. We're going to be, this is all around legal action and acts and stuff like that. So if there's something that I say that doesn't quite make sense, feel free to ask me to explain it a different way. But if you have any good questions that are good for all of us to talk about together for a discussion, try to hold those towards the end so that we can have a good discussion with each other. Just to go over what we're going to be talking about today, I'll just explain to you who we are, what we do, exactly how those protections work with folks with mental illnesses, what they look like. We'll do some actual examples so that we can apply these kind of concepts. And then not only that, but what do you do if you face them, and what do those resources look like if you do have to face discrimination? So I already told you all who we are, but what do we actually do? So we serve the entire state. And we investigate claims of housing discrimination. So we provide that free legal representation and advocacy when somebody has a housing discrimination case. This can come from a person just calling our office. This can come from a case manager. Any way it's reported to us, our intake staff will work on that issue with you. And we have a lawyer as our executive director who will file any cases for you. So discrimination isn't always the most blatant thing. It's not usually just on a sign, no person here. So what do we do when it's kind of a little bit more discreet to prove it? Is we do discrimination testing. So if someone comes and says, hi, they told me they wouldn't rent to me because of my race. Well, we would say, okay, we don't have proof of that because it was said. So we would send someone in if it was because a person was Black, we would send a Black person in and a white person in to this housing provider with the exact same application, with the exact same qualifications, and we would train them to have very similar stories so they look like similar applicants. And then we would see how both of them were treated, and they would document that thoroughly, and we could use that as legal evidence to support somebody's case. And then the final thing that we do is we do things like this. We provide training and outreach for community members. We do this for individuals, organizations, and housing providers to make sure that everyone is aware of what their housing rights are, and our housing providers know what their obligations are to the people in our community. So that leads to kind of what is fair housing. So the Fair Housing Act, it's a federal law. It was passed in 1968. It was a part of the civil rights movement, and it applies to private and public housing, and it prohibits discrimination both in sale and rental for anyone who's under a protected class. So there's 9 federal protected classes. They include race, skin color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, disability, gender identity, and sexual orientation. Today, we're going to focus on disability, but I want to make an important note to you all that these aren't stagnant. This wasn't originally passed with all 9. It actually only had 4, but we've added extra classes on throughout time as we've seen the need. And also your local community can actually add in more protections. If you live in Louisville, last year, our Metro Council passed an ordinance to make it so that you cannot be discriminated against also on the basis of homelessness, on the basis of criminal history, on the basis of veteran status, and source of income. So just because you get your income maybe from a disability check versus from a job, you can't be discriminated against. All is legal income and should be considered equal to a housing provider. But that's unique to Louisville, and only because we passed it and advocated for it on a local level. So it's not something that you have to wait for the federal government to protect. So for disability protections, there is a fair housing protection, but there's also several other different ways that you're protected under federal law. I just want to mention them. We're really not going to go into them today, but it's Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, Title II of the American with Disabilities Act. And so these will usually overlap, but it always emphasizes that if you're not sure but something feels wrong and you're not being treated correctly or not given accurate resources in your housing for your disability, then you should look into it, ask the people around you, because there are protections. But in the Fair Housing Act of 1988, amendments also added that persons with disabilities must be granted reasonable accommodations and modifications in order to afford equal enjoyment of the dwelling. We'll get into kind of what that means more later, but it means it's not just I can't be discriminated against based on my mental illness, but there's also ways that you're allowed to ask for accommodations for your housing in order to best be able to enjoy your home. So mental illness is covered under disability. I know we usually think of disability kind of in a negative light, and we also only think of it in physical, but we know that that's just not true. There are many disabilities that are not visible, and we often can't tell by looking at someone if they're living with a mental health condition. We know every day there's tenants that go in with anxiety, depression, mood disorders, or psychosis seeking housing. And because these disabilities may be less noticeable, your landlords may be more hesitant to allow accommodation. So that's why it's so important today that we talk about how you're still protected under fair housing laws and how we can help as a community. So this reasonable accommodation versus reasonable modification. So if you get into a housing situation and there's a rule, a policy, or something in how your landlord does business that really doesn't work for you and your disability. Say they have a really strict visitor policy, but you really need that community and visitor support in order to have a good use of, and what do they call it, an equal enjoyment of dwelling is the legal kind of term for it there. But to use that space, then you can go to your landlord and ask for a change of that policy. A reasonable modification would be a structural change. So that's really if you needed to add any sort of usually a ramp or any really physical structure. And the easiest way to know the difference between these two is if you need a pin, if you just need to cross something out in a policy change, you need an accommodation. If you need a hammer, you need a modification. But both of these you're allowed to ask for. And this is also the only time that you may be asked ever to give up any sort of medical information. You may have to provide documentation from your primary care provider that states why you need this accommodation or modification. But other than that, you should never be asked about your mental illness, anything about it by your landlord or housing provider. That is not their business. But you just might be able to have a note from your doctor, but that doesn't give them license to ask you any uncomfortable questions or for you to have to provide any information you don't want to. So our most common thing that we come across for reasonable accommodations is emotional support animals. So this is if your housing provider had a really strict no pets policy. Well, you could ask for a reasonable accommodation for an emotional support animal. It's defined as an animal that provides emotional support that alleviates one or more identified symptoms. So this is really important that it's not a service animal. So service animal falls under a whole different category. It has a lot of restrictions on it. It can only actually be a dog or a miniature pony. And in emotional support animals, also not a pet. So once again, all of those pet rules do not apply. And it isn't specific to any type of animal or breed. It can be a dog, cat, rabbit, whatever it is. Just, we use that word reasonable a lot. It's like a cat or a dog or a rabbit. 20 rabbits is a harder argument to make. But if it's identified as a need that you have, then you can certainly able to ask for it under the Fair Housing Law. And so now I want to kind of go into some examples that we have of what this would actually look like if you were in a situation. So, and what you should do. So say your housing provider learns that you previously lived in an institutional setting. After learning this information, they require the completion of an additional screening approval process in order for you to be able to rent one of their units. Do you all think this is a fair housing law violation? Any thoughts? Anybody want to put it in the chat or say? Yeah. All right. Yes. Yeah, correct. So you also it is. But what would you do as a tenant in this situation? Well, you wouldn't. The most thing you're ever going to get from a legal office is they're going to tell you document, 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 document. So your first thing that you would want to make sure to document that they required this extra approval process. And then you would want to either for yourself or if you feel not comfortable or not safe, contact our office. And we are happy to have this conversation for you and say, hey, did you know actually under my fair housing rights, I should not be subject to any additional rules from an institutional setting. And so remember that can include like if you're in mental health stay, if you were in a recovery setting, any sort of those are covered under that disability portion. And I shouldn't be treated differently and explain that to them. You can also report that to us and we can have that conversation if you're uncomfortable doing so. But that absolutely should never be happening. And just make sure to provide good documentation along the way. Okay. So our second example. So your neighbors, so not your landlord, your neighbors in a housing complex are upset that you as a tenant with a disability was granted a reasonable accommodation to have an emotional support animal. The tenant, you find an intimidating note on your door. So this is just your neighbors, not your housing provider. Is it still a fair housing violation? What do y'all think? Drop it in the chat if you want. Yeah, so you all are good. This is a little bit with like an asterisk on it. It's that it's yes if. So this should absolutely be reported to your landlord or housing provider. And if they do not act, that is a fair housing violation. I think someone put it in, you're still aren't enjoying your dwelling, right? You are not able to have equal access to enjoyment of your dwelling because of harassment. And you should never have harassment because you are using your reasonable accommodation. And so because of that, your housing provider is required to take action if they see harassment, just like if you were to file a noise complaint because someone was violating the lease and a noise complaint, your landlord would be required to take action. And for your next steps is the moment you receive any sort of bothersome from a neighbor, document it, report it, send that to your landlord. I would recommend sending it in an email in a written format because it's always better if it's written. Or if you call, just so you know, you are absolutely always allowed to record phone calls. If you think you got somebody who's going to be a little shysty on the low, you are absolutely allowed to record your phone calls in order to have that documentation. And you can do that and ask them what their follow-up steps are going to be in order to ensure that you have safety in your dwelling and follow their steps from there. If they aren't taking action, that's absolutely when you can contact us where we can start investigating that claim for you because they should have to take action for that. So you should never face housing discrimination and your protections for reasonable accommodation should always be allowed under fair housing. But we know that doesn't always happen. So ultimately, how can we protect ourselves as we go into housing situations and as we look for housing? So one, know your rights. Go in there informed and ready. They're not going to know your rights for you. So the best that you know them is better, right? Not only with fair housing, but what are your local tenant laws that you can look for? What kind of things do you need to make sure that you're looking for that before you even start the process of renting? Make sure that you feel well informed to do that. And if you don't, reach out to some of your community people that do this work, that are doing housing work to make sure that you're well informed before you even start the process. Don't disclose unnecessary medical information. You should never be asked medical information. Once again, actually, you shouldn't be asked. You should maybe be required to provide documentation for reasonable accommodation, but you still shouldn't be asked personal questions about anything about your mental illness ever by a housing provider. And if you are, you should absolutely report them that should not be happening. And also don't disclose it unnecessarily. You don't need to disclose that you're on a disability payment or anything like that. Just go look for the property. Ask for that reasonable accommodation. I talked earlier about how, we often think it's invisible. It's hard to ask for the help, but ultimately, if you need it, you need it, and there's no other way about it. And if you need it to be able to have good housing, make sure to ask for those accommodations that you need, those policy changes that would help you be able to not only survive, but thrive in that housing a little bit better. And finally, ask for help or resources when you need them. Our organization exists. There's so many other good housing organizations that exist in your local community that are ready and available for housing resources. And I'll kind of break those down just in a second, what those kind of look like. And if you experience discrimination, call us. We're here to help, even if you're just not sure about what it is, or if you belong to another protected class other that isn't disability, but if there's another protected class that you fall under and you would like more information, call us. We're always able to help and ready to walk you through that process. So resources. So obviously we're here, NAMI's here, they told you about their units. If you're looking for someone to support you and what your tenant rights are, your local tenant union organization is always a good place to start, especially if you're looking for that community support around organizing and what that's able to do. There's usually a community supported group like that around in your community. If you have a tenant violation that falls outside of fair housing, you can still get that free legal help if you need it. Legal aid is able to do that for you. They're available. They have great lawyers that have been working constantly throughout COVID to make sure that people have good accommodations. If something happens, we know things happen, and you are below on your payment or you can't make that rent, there are housing resources out there, not only with the COVID resources that we saw from the city and the state, but your local organizations have them. I know Louisville Urban League here in Louisville has great housing resources if you ever need them. And once again, it's not good enough just to survive, but we also need to thrive. And if you're, so many times when we have mental illness and we're struggling, if you survived, you did great, but now you might not have had time to get those skills that you need to thrive in your housing. So those cooking classes, those how do I make a budget that works for me and things like that, there's most likely a community center not too far from you, or a local community association like your Association of Community Ministries. There's one of those in every neighborhood that most likely has somebody on staff or has that class available and ready for you for free that you can take advantage of. And that's what I have for us today. Thank you all so much for your time here. It was great to be able to get together with NAMI, and I think if we're ready to move on to Q&A after that, and I can always post my contact information in this when we're done.
Yeah, that was so helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you. That was a great presentation. So we do have a couple of questions. If anybody else has any questions, you can send them in the chat while I ask this. And yeah, otherwise we will end this. So the first question I have is for Nancy. So if you have a family member that probably needs to be dependent on someone to live successfully alone, but refuses to live with family or to talk to them, how can you support them?
I want to say too, after all this talk about disability, mental illness is the number one cause for disability throughout the United States. So again, when you're looking at why, there are amazing amounts of issues, and one is often resistance to the support of loved ones. So the family is trying to help. The parents are trying to help. The good friends are trying to help, and the individual is resisting that. There are always legal steps you can take. Again, if anyone ever wanted to just call our office and talk to Lori about a specific need like this, we can start tackling it by, making a list of all the possible folks that we could talk to support you in this journey. A lot of parents will decide they're going to be the guardian of their loved one. So they're going to help them make those decisions. As a good example, one of our volunteers, her mother's her guardian. When she has a relapse on her mental illness and begins to struggle, her mother will say, you know, I think you need to come home again, and bring her home for a period of time. And then when she's doing really well, she'll let that guard down a bit and help her find a safe place to live. It gives you a little bit more of an avenue to support. Many people will think of that as control, so it's a hard conversation to have. Also, sometimes there's supported housing out there that is designed to support someone that has a mental illness, where they are with other folk, but just not living under their parents' roof, that sort of thing. So yeah, whoever asked that question, please reach out and let us help you tackle that if you live in the Louisville or, you know, 7 counties area, because we do cover Southern Indiana and Oldham County and Bullitt, Hardin, and all that.
Awesome, thank you. So we have a similar question that says, how can we help the transition of a loved one with a mental health condition with moving out and the beginning stages of living alone, and to support their mental health?
Yeah, with that one, I think that one slide that we had was really valuable, and just, you know, be there to support them in the ways they need. If they need you, I mean, I wish right now my mother would come clean my house, you know? So if you want to help, decide what that is. Say, hey, I'm willing to bring dinner to you every Thursday. If it's, can I just come over and visit with you on Sunday? And then when you're there, you maybe can help with something. Maybe you can write bills or clean the kitchen or whatever it is that needs to happen. Sometimes, you know, if you're just in the beginning journeys and they don't have a place where they're going to stay yet, you can get involved in that process and help them find a safe place, a comfortable place. I looked at the Jefferson County Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods document that was talking about how to define a healthy neighborhood. And I was surprised at some of the concepts, because it's not just about expensive homes or fancy stores to go to. It's about diversity. It's about culture. It's about what amount of space you might have, or how old the homes are in your neighborhood versus how new they are. So there's a lot going on there, and you can feel that. I think you can feel it when you're walking through a neighborhood. So go and check those places out with them before they end up signing a lease someplace that ends up not being a good place for their spirit.
That is a great idea, getting to know your neighborhood before you move in. I wish I would have known that. These next few questions are for Kat. So one says, I think this was a clarification question. Did you say that they could, in the past, discriminate against you for being homeless? Or was that a mishearing?
So that is a new addition to Louisville. Louisville's the only one that has that. So there was no specific law that says you cannot just, like, if someone said, no, you're formerly homeless, I don't want to house you, they could absolutely say that. And they can say that anywhere that isn't Louisville. So that's a Louisville added protection that happened last year. So there's various ways. Now there's like different arguments you can make in a legal setting to where it's that something that we call disparate impact. So if that's something that disproportionately affects one group that is already protected under fair housing, then that is discrimination, which you could probably make with homelessness. But as a specific protected class, yeah, they could say, no, I don't want to house someone who's homeless.
Wow. Okay.
Not the greatest, not the gloomiest answer, but it is protected in Louisville.
Well, and one thing that I might add too is that we do try to work to help individuals who are homeless, who have, you know, circumstances that are impacting their mental health. It can be safety. It can be one gentleman's custody agreement with his ex-wife was that he couldn't see the child because he was homeless, and he was waiting 9 months for our housing authority to get him housing. So we started being creative. How can we help Sam find housing, you know? So again, we're willing to support people in that journey.
Great. Can the landlord say no to any of the reasonable accommodations before you sign a lease? Like if you're asking questions?
No. You can ask for a reasonable accommodation at any point. It can be the day you sign a lease. It can be 9 months into a 12. At any point that you decide you need an accommodation, you can ask for it. And the only thing they can really ask you is they can ask for that documentation that states why, because they might, once again, like there are people that say I need multiple emotional support animals, and they might say, okay, well, I need to be told why. That could happen. They also might not. A lot of times if it's a physical disability, you say I need a ramp, the likelihood that they would ask you for a doctor's note is pretty low. But we know with invisible disabilities, they most likely are going to ask for that primary care doctor. And we do recommend you go through your doctor. If you go online, there are some scammy websites that will like get your certificate here for this, and that will not uphold in any court of law.
All right, thank you. Aisha asks, I am the street outreach coordinator for the Shelter of Hope in Ashland. Is there any way I can get involved here and to have some information on training from our organization? That is also something, if you would like to send, we can send through the follow-up email afterwards. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you just contact us if you want any sort of, we do trainings for organizations and for shelters. So if you need that, you would contact me, or there's a contact form on our website.
Beautiful. And then Judith asks, what about protecting us from other tenants who have been successful at living in multi-unit housing?
So that would be your landlord. So talk to your landlord if there's any sort of issues where tenants are affecting your mental health and their leases. Your landlord should be adjusting that. If you're living in a different housing environment where maybe people are seeking support, that might be a different conversation where they're also working with them. So it would just be an open conversation that you need to make sure that you have with your housing provider. And if that conversation isn't going any further and there's legal breaches, that's when you maybe reach out for some support.
The landlord took no action. So yes, reach out for support.
Yeah, you come for us because they should be offering that.
Great. If anybody else has any questions, you can put them in the chat, but we are at 7:07 right now, so we'll go ahead and end the meeting. Thank you everybody for attending. We'll be sending a follow-up email tomorrow morning with our contact information, this recording, and other helpful resources. Again, if you need any support on the housing side, you can reach out to Kat and she'll be able to help you. And if you need any support or resources on the mental health side, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Nancy, or you can go to our website at namilouisville.org and someone there will support you. Again, if you like this workshop and you'd like to see more, we also have a mental health advocacy committee that you can check out on our website, and we would love for more people to join. All right, perfect. So I'm going to stop this recording now.
Thanks, everyone.